We've got a brand new cordless ratchet in. Is it something you need? Well, we'll find out. I'm Tim Johnson. You're watching Shop Tool Reviews. We just got in the Durofix RW1216 or RW1216. Now this is their 3/8 inch, 12 volt powered cordless extended reach ratchet. Now does this add up to the other cordless ratchets that are on the market? Let's actually find out. We'll talk about the features, we'll look at weights and specs and that sort of thing. Then we'll actually put it on our test bench, talk about how it works and how powerful it is. Then we'll come back and wrap it all up, talk about pricing, warranty, and what we thought of it. Now I would typically save this section for last during the wrap up, but I just wanted to bring this to the forefront since this is a newer name. If you don't know the Durafix name, it's been around a long time in other parts of the world, just not right here in the USA. It is made in Taiwan. However, they have made tools for many other brands in the past and still currently. So it's a very well-known brand and they make some quality tools. Now let's talk about value. I'm not going to talk about pricing right now. I'm going to talk about value because when we see a new brand, when we see a new name, we start thinking, is it something that I want to buy into? And that's a great question to ask. You should ask those questions. But value doesn't mean just price. Value is the amount of good you're getting per dollar per se, or percent that you're paying for a tool. So how much good are you going to get per dollar that you spend? And then you measure that up against other tools. And so we want to know things like power, things like warranty, things we want to know price, and we want to know, does it work for us? How are the ergonomics on it? And those sorts of things. And that's what we try to bring to you, so that you can make that value decision. Also, I want you to understand there are many companies and tools that come to us asking to be on our channel, asking for us to review tools. They want to send us free stuff so that we can put it on the channel, and we do not accept every offer out there. In fact, there are many that we don't accept, especially this time of year. We're flooded with emails and social media contacts of people wanting us to review tools, and we take that seriously. So the ones you see on our channels are the ones that we've weeded through because of that value proposition that we actually dig into to see, is this going to fit our readers, our viewers? So I just wanted to lay that out there for you before we get started. So let's get started. So this is the Durafix RW1216. So yep, confirm the model number RW1216. And as I mentioned, a 3/8 inch ratchet wrench or 3/8 inch cordless ratchet, and it has the extended head on it, so we're calling it an extended reach ratchet. Now let's go ahead and first just kind of measure this and get an overall length right at a little over 16 inches from the head to the tail. So you do get that, I would call that, 4-inch extension, if you will, in the head, so you don't just have a stubby head sticking out. You've got an area where you can actually reach into places to grab whether it be spark plugs or whatever you're working on. I will agree that when it comes to cordless ratchets, these extended reach ratchets work a lot better, make a lot more sense than something where the head is stubby right here, because then your body comes into play right here in the ratchet as to what you can reach. And obviously we can always run an extension, but still having that extended head out there makes it a lot easier. Now as far as the thickness on the head there, or depth if you will, right at an inch, just barely over an inch. Obviously, if you added the anvil and the switch there, the forward reverse switch, you're looking at 1.7 inches, so almost 1.75 inches. But obviously, you're going to have a socket on there, so depending on what depth socket, it's going to determine how deep you actually need that. And as far as width across the head, 1.6 inches, so a little over 1.5 inches. Not the smallest in the world, but again, it's not too huge, if you will. And then you have your typical reversing switch here, like your older style ratchets, where you can flip it left for forward and to the right for reverse. This is powered by a 12 volt battery. So we get a 12 volt 2 amp hour battery, which is the B127LA. Again, it's a 2 amp hour, 24 watt hours out. So that's basically 12 times 2. So you take your voltage, 12 volts, times 2 amp hours gives you 24 watt hours out on the 12 volt system. You do get a trigger style, so a little bit like a paddle, so it's a longer trigger, a broader trigger, if you will. So that comes in handy when you're having to position your hand in different ways, depending on the orientation you're needing to use the ratchet. So I can easily use my thumb on this. I can use any of my 3 or 4 fingers on the hand that's near there to actually depress that trigger. So I do like having that very broad trigger. It's not just a real small trigger where I have to use my index finger or a single finger. Pretty much whatever I can reach, however I'm orienting that ratchet, I can grab that button. It's also a variable speed. So in other words, I can really make this go really slow. So you can see that. Or if I go wide open is going to give me the max of 260 RPM. As I mentioned, it's a 3/8 anvil, so we get our 3/8 inch anvil with the ball detent there to hold those sockets in place and easily remove and install them, or remove and replace those sockets. We get an LED light right here in front of the trigger, pretty bright LED, especially for just a single LED. So it's going to shine on that fastener the best it can. So we're not going to get a ton of light. It's not a shop light by any means, but it is shining a little bit of light up there where we can actually see it. And then right here in front of the trigger is a trigger lock. So that's going to ensure when you throw this in your toolbox, when you throw it in the truck, whatever it is that you're doing with it, it'll lock that trigger so the light doesn't come on, the tool doesn't come on. So that'll save that battery while you have it in places where you're not using it. So really easy to lock and unlock that as well. Let's weigh it real quick and see what kind of weight we're talking about. We'll weigh it with the battery because that's the only way you're going to use this tool. So with the 2 amp hour battery, 3 pounds, 7 ounces. So right at 3.5 pounds. And I will say this is built really well, and we have a lot of weight that's out here on the snout or out here on the nose of this ratchet. It's not too uncomfortable to hold here, but you can definitely feel that weight. At the same time, the reason we have all that weight out here is because we have all this steel built into this extension here of the ratchet, protecting the mechanism here as well as providing that strength. And that's great to know because in addition to the 65 foot-pounds that they claim as far as power that it can put out, they also rate this at 120 foot-pounds of manual force. And that's a big key when it comes to breaking things loose as well as finishing the tightening on something. When we're looking at a cordless ratchet, we want to know, is it going to run the nut on and off, and then can we manually put some force on this without having flexion or without having additional flex in the tool, and will it hold up to it? We also get rubber overmolding here on the handle to help aid in grasping this and holding on to it. So we do get some rubber overmolding. It's not just a piece of plastic. Now let's get this over on the test bench and see what we think. Okay, one of the first things we want to check out, as I mentioned, we really look at cordless ratchets as being nut running devices. In other words, will it run nuts on and off? And then does it have the strength for us to manually input something? So let's say you're doing a brake job and you've got to break the caliper bolts loose or the caliper fasteners loose. It may be a Torx, maybe a bolt, maybe nuts. Anyway, so you need to break those loose. The last thing you want to do is have to go get a ratchet in order to break something free, or a breaker bar, and then pull the trigger on your cordless ratchet to finish it off. You want to be able to manually input some power into your ratchet to break it free, then squeeze that trigger, or run it on by squeezing the trigger, and then finish off by manually inputting it using the same tool. That's where we see this tool come into play. It's not an impact wrench. It's not a right angle impact wrench. Totally different tool. This is a cordless ratchet. So my point being, we're going to go ahead and let's torque these to 120. I think they rate it for 120 pounds. We'll bump it on up. We'll say 150 and back those off with this ratchet to make sure it's going to hold together and still work for us. So let's do that. So we're going to use our torque gun here. $150 foot-pounds. Do this one at 150. Okay, so we've got these 3 fasteners torqued to 150 foot-pounds. Obviously, our ratchet is not going to break those free like on here. So here, obviously it's not going to break that free. When I pull the trigger, it's not going to do anything. But when I manually input some force, will it be able to hold up to break that 150 foot-pounds free? And here goes. No problem at all. Now we can run that nut off. Let's go ahead and do this one as well. There we go. And one last one. Let's really look here at what type of flex we may be having. And I'm just going to bear down right here on the end of the tool. I'm not going to push on the battery. That wouldn't be smart. But I'm going to go right there at the end of the tool, and let's see how much flex we get. Really not much at all. You can probably tell better in the video than I can with my naked eye. I really didn't feel much flex at all in this tool. Even though it's plastic right here, they've done a good job of securing this body to the ratchet head, so we're breaking free more than they even recommend. They're recommending 120 foot-pounds. We just did 150. Now let's see what type of force we can actually put out with this or break free. We're going to start with just 120 foot-pounds here, or I'm sorry, 120 inch-pounds, which is 10 foot-pounds. So I'm going to go ahead. Here we go. 10 foot-pounds. Okay, so there's 10 foot-pounds. Will this break free 10 foot-pounds just by pulling the trigger? Yep. Okay, not a problem. Now we're going to 180 inch-pounds, which would be 15 foot-pounds. So now 15 foot-pounds. Okay, so 15 foot-pounds, no problem at all either. Now we're going to go to 25 foot-pounds. If you can see that, if there's a glare on there. So now we're at 25 foot-pounds. And okay. Couple of pulls of the trigger. That one broke free. And that one broke free. So one of them had a little sticking point. We had to pull the trigger a couple of times. Now let's go to 35 foot-pounds. So now 35 foot-pounds. Okay. Now I'm just using the raw power of this tool. Okay, it broke that one free. Broke that one free. There. So a couple of clicks. And again, I'm not using any input whatsoever. But as soon as it clicks a couple of times, it breaks that free. So let's run it on up to 50. So now we're at 50 foot-pounds. I really don't think it's going to do any of these. And I'll explain why in a moment. Yep, so you see, again, I'm not putting any input. I'm trying to keep this as stationary as possible. Nope. Now, here's what people tell me all the time, is they kind of use the NASCAR method, they say, of they spin this and then throw it on the nut at the same time. So I don't agree with this, but because people ask me to do this all the time when testing cordless ratchets, so yes, it will do that, but will also strip fasteners in doing it. Now what I would rather do is what we did earlier, is just use it like a ratchet. So this one's at 50 foot-pounds, just a little input, and then pull the trigger. I don't believe at all that this is an impact wrench. This is a nut running device. This is a ratchet, so that's what I want to use it for. I want to be able to input some force, whether that be tightening or loosening, and then utilize the cordless aspect of it of using that motor to drive off those nuts. And there we have it. Let's start off by saying every cordless ratchet that we have reviewed, and I mean every single one, has stopped short of actually outputting the amount of torque that they claim it does. Now, we have no idea of how they come to those conclusions. Nobody has shared with us how they reach their torque numbers. Now, on impact wrenches, we figured out a way to back our way into kind of measuring how they're getting their results so that we can replicate that. We have not done so with the cordless ratchets yet, so we're not surprised when this came up short from the 65 foot-pounds. But as I mentioned, Milwaukee, Makita, Ingersoll Rand, and every other one that we've tested has done the same, came up short. So when they claimed 65 foot-pounds, we didn't expect to see that. Now, there are some rumors that Snap-on actually hits those numbers. We don't have very many Snap-on tools that we review, but maybe at some point we'll check that out. But as for the Durafix, I think we hit somewhere in the 30, 35 foot-pound range of being able to break it free without giving any assistance whatsoever. Just holding the tool straight, pulling the trigger, and backing those off. Again, 30, 35 foot-pounds. Weren't surprised at all, and that doesn't really affect what we think this should score. Because, as we mentioned earlier, that we feel like this is a nut running device. This is not an impact wrench. It's not a right angle impact. It's not meant to just pull the trigger and it hammer away at something and be able to back something off or tighten something. It needs to be able to run a nut off, even if there's a little rust or something like that. But as far as breaking it free, that's where that manual input comes. And that's also why we think it's very important that the manufacturers state how much force you can apply, and they recommended 120 foot-pounds to be the max. We pushed that to 150 foot-pounds and really didn't see any flex in the tool, so it did very well. Now, price-wise, this is $139, $139 for the kit. That gives you one battery, one 12-volt, 2-amp-hour battery, the charger, and the tool, as well as this beautiful carrying case. Anyway, that's $139, comes with a 1-year warranty. Now, as far as when it comes to the quality of the build, the performance, features, things like that, do we think it comes at top of the heap? No, we don't. When looking at, say, the Milwaukee has a brushless motor. When you want an extended reach, they have a brushless motor. This has a brushed motor. At the same time, if you don't have to run a brushless motor, we're absolutely fine in having a brushed motor and saving that money. Now comes into play what we talked about with value. That's when you have to take it upon yourself to say, what am I willing to pay for those features and performance, if there is a difference, than what I am in accepting something that may be a little cheaper. And that's where I think Durafix is hitting that. They're saying, hey, we're not looking for the best performance in the world, but we're looking to perform good enough to be in the hands of a pro, and I think they're doing that. So you don't get a brushless motor, you get a brushed motor, but you are getting a $139 kit, whereas with the Milwaukee, you're starting at, I think, $229 just for the tool, and then it's like $349 if you wanted to buy the tool with the kit. Makita may be a little bit cheaper, and some of the others I'm not sure about as far as pricing. So that's where you're at, and that's why I explained kind of the value proposition in the beginning. That's up for you to decide. I can't decide that for you. I don't like it when people say, yes, this is the tool you ought to buy, when really we all have different budgets in mind. We're also all looking for different features and different performance levels when it comes to tools. Hey, be sure to check out the Durafix for $139. It's really hard to beat. Also, keep track of us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you don't mind, would you hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't done so already? By all means, if you hated our video, give us a thumbs down, but would you let us know in the comments why? Have a great day and keep smiling.